The truth was, my family was not happy. My eldest was never out of the headmaster's office, and me with him, and I shouted at him all day long. He was shouted at in the morning to get out of the bed, and to get organised for school. And in fact, by the time he got to age 11 and P7, I got into my car and nearly broke my wrist on my steering wheel, banging it, going, when is this ever going to go in? And of course he was sitting beside me in the passenger seat going, I can't even remember what that's about. And then he would get shouted at in school and I would hear about that, and he would get shouted at when he came home from school because he wouldn't do the homework, and I used to chase him around for 2 hours trying to get him to sit down. He wouldn't eat the dinner that was made for everybody else, and I thought, wrongly, he just wants a dinner made for himself. He wants a bit of attention. He would then thump his younger brother in the evening, and then he would get shouted at to get into the bed that he wouldn't get out of the next morning. And it all started again. And I used to wake up in the morning and think, I am not going to shout at him today. And within 30 seconds, I was back on his back. So to say that his future was uncertain is an understatement. The transformation started really for John when he went into high school or secondary school. And we were called to the headmaster, we were called to the school to be told that if he didn't pull his socks up within 2 weeks, he was losing his place in the top class. Now, obviously I came out devastated and thought, well, he's not bad, he just can't conform in a classroom, and I'm going to find out why. So I dived in on certainty and dived into Google and researched and found a balance and coordination program that quite simply made total sense to me. I contacted them. The girl I spoke to, well, she cried. I cried. I asked her about fussy eating. She said, oh yeah, well, that just goes with the territory. It's a sensory thing. And I signed him up. Now, I picked him up that day from the bus, and there used to always be a fight to get into the front seat of the car, but that day he sat in the back, obviously out of swiping distance because I'd been at the school that day. And but I had found the solution, so I said to him, I think I know what's going on with you, and I think I know what to do about it. And he went, all right. And I said, well, yeah, this is why you've been in the naughty chair since primary, and why you can't eat the rest as everybody else, and why you can't get to sleep at night, and why I'm never off your back. And of course I was rabbiting on as I do. And I looked in the rearview mirror at my 12-year-old, and there were big tears rolling down his face. And he said to me, does this mean that I don't have to feel like this for the rest of my life? And I said, well, that's what they're telling me. It's not medication, it's not injections, it's balance and coordination, active play. Let's give it a go. And the rest of that day, every time we looked at each other, we hugged and cried. Probably because, well, I take it that he knew he could trust me, that I wasn't going to tell him I'd find a solution if I hadn't. And it was just such a big relief for him. So I'd signed him up for the programme. Having done the evaluation, I realised that there was a swathe of questions that didn't apply to John. But the next morning I woke up and went, they apply to Peter. He's dyslexic. Which was something I hadn't even considered with Peter, even though he was 10 and a half and had difficulty reading, writing, spelling, but because he was so smart, I thought, you know, he'll eventually click. And I used to write the sentences out for him, thinking he'll eventually go, oh, okay, so that's how you structure a sentence. But of course, that was wishful thinking. But anyway, So having realised that, I phoned him and signed him up as well, but I thought I want my proof on Peter because it's easier to get for someone who's dyslexic. So I took him to the educational psychologist and he had an IQ of 121, top 9% in the UK, right? He was 10 and a half years of age. His spelling, it was a spelling age of 7, and reading and comprehension was 2 years behind. He was totally dyslexic. And so I did the programme with him as well. And after the year, it took a year, just 15 minutes once a day. And after the year, I took him back to the psychologist again because I knew he'd changed. He was coming in and doing his homework. John was actually coming in and doing his homework too. But Peter was able to come in and just write the sentences and write what was in his head down on paper. So I knew there was a change, but I wanted the proof because I had had the idea of providing it for other families at this stage. So I took him back to the psychologist and all his scores had risen to his chronological age, and spelling was just 8 months behind. It had been 3.5 years behind. And I did nothing extra with that child. This was actually over a P7 year, so if that translates, it's, you're age 11, you're going on to high school, but that year you're not doing any structured reading, writing, etc. So I had my proof, and but backtracking back to whenever Peter was 8, he'd come out of school one day, so this is before I knew what was going on. He came out of school one day and he says, "Mummy," he says, "I have to go and get my eyes tested." And I'm like, right, okay, I don't remember a letter coming in from school to say the optician was in school, but hey, the kid doesn't lie, so let's go and get his eyes tested. So down we went, and of course he had 20/20 vision, there was nothing wrong, he didn't need glasses. So I was like, fine. But that child came out of that optician's that day and turned his face to the plate glass window and sobbed. And I thought, he must just want glasses like his brother, because his brother had got glasses the year before. Nothing more was said about it, but I just said to him, like, "Come on, we'll get you a toy," which was weird because we only ever did toys at Christmas and birthday, but he was sobbing, absolutely distraught. So nothing more was said about that until about, I would say, 2 years ago, when they were actually sitting in my house and they were talking about the programme and stuff and talking about themselves. And they says, "Mum, like, where would we be if you hadn't found that programme?" And I went, "I know." And then I said to Peter, "Do you remember you asking to go to the optician?" And he went, "Yeah." He says, "Oh." And I went, "You must have seen somebody else in the classroom that had got glasses and all of a sudden could read and write and get on with their work." And he went, "I did." And he named the child that he'd seen. And I went, "And you thought if you got glasses, you'd be able to keep up with your work too?" And he went, "Mm-hmm." And I went, and then obviously whenever you sobbed, you obviously were going to yourself, well, if I don't need glasses, then I just must be stupid. And I went, "Yeah." I said, "But they don't tell you at that age, it's when they're out of the mess." So the impact of all of that on our lives, on our family lives, is that John became chef, had the most organised station in the kitchen, and this was the kid who could not organise his bag in first year. And 6 years ago, I asked him to come and join me in the company, and he did. And it's been brilliant because he was that child. He knows exactly what it's like to sit in that classroom and not be able to get it. And so therefore, he never puts a child under pressure now. And Peter became a surveyor and passed his HNC with distinction, handwritten, didn't need any extra help in school. And Peter has just resigned, and in the new year he's coming to join me in the company as well. So to say that I'm a proud mother is beyond it, and to say that my family is happy is the understatement of the year, and we now all are going to be working together to make other families happy as well. Thank you.